started for our junior night for this year. I just want to first say welcome to everyone, and thank you for coming out, and we virtually, and we greatly appreciate everyone being in attendance. I do see here that we have some people coming in, but we are going to go ahead and get started with everything. So first, I do want to introduce myself. I am Mr. McClam. I am our College and Career Center Specialist here at Oakton High School, and I'm also joined by Miss Allison, and I want her to go ahead and introduce herself as well.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Allison Cavallo. I am one of the counselors at Oakton High School. Again, thank you for joining us virtually. We are very excited to still be able to offer our junior family night to everyone. And before we get started, I do want to introduce real quickly, we do have 3 other counselors here with us. So I just want to quickly introduce Elizabeth Chase Kang, Dr. Jessica Wilkes, and Ms. Wyatt. And also, just because we have a lot of information to cover, at least I think I did, I'm kind of new to this whole BBCU sessions. I have disabled the chat and the mic and camera functions for our participants. We would like our presenters to be able to go through and answer all of the questions that we will be presenting to them. And then at the end, when we have our Q&A, I'll turn everything back on. So I'm going to hand it back over to Mr. McClam.
All right, perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenters for the night. They're going to be our admissions representatives from 4 universities. They've been so gracious to give us some time this evening to answer some questions that we have. So first, I have Miss Amanda Waldo. She is from George Mason University, and she is an admissions representative for George Mason. We also have Mr. Mario Cruz. He is actually the admissions assistant director at Virginia Tech. We have Miss Sophia Faiyas, and she's from St. Joseph's. And we also have Mr. Will Stratton from University of South Carolina. And everyone, if you would like to please just, if we can just kind of introduce yourselves really quickly. I know I gave you a name and where you're from, but if you want to introduce yourself, just give a little tidbit about you, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our questions after that. Ms. Amanda, if you don't mind getting started.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Like Mr. McClam said, my name is Amanda Waldo, and I am an admissions counselor at George Mason, so right down the road from you all in Northern Virginia. And I guess a little bit tidbit, I'm originally from South Texas, so the snow that we're currently getting, I'm still getting used to it.
And Mr. Mario.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mario Cruz. I'm one of the assistant directors for the Office of Undergraduate Admissions at Virginia Tech. I'm from Washington, D.C., Northwest, Columbia Heights, so I'm local. So glad to be here.
Miss Sophia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Faiyas. I'm an admission counselor at St. Joseph's University. We're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And a little tidbit about myself, I will be a 2-time graduate of St. Joseph's, so I'm in the process of getting my master's, but I did graduate from St. Joseph's for undergrad in 2018.
And Mr. Will.
Okay, oops. Trying to get the video to come through, but while we work on that, I'll start talking for a second. Oh no. Okay, I'm gonna have to troubleshoot the video. But anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Will Stratton. I'm the Greater Washington, D.C. admissions representative for the University of South Carolina. This is my 6th year in college admissions. Prior to coming to South Carolina, I worked at a small private university where I was assistant director of admissions. So thank you all for being here again.
All right, we greatly appreciate everybody coming, and again, we appreciate the time, and we're just going to go ahead and jump in with some questions. So, Ms. Amanda, we'll start off first, and one of the questions that we always ask is, and we always get asked by students is, how should I begin my search? So what's some advice that you would give our students on how to begin, and students and families on how to begin a college search?
Yeah, so we always like to, obviously the internet is always a great place, College Board specifically, other online resources, but one person or resource that we really like to highlight for families and students is to use their guidance counselors or their college counselors in the high school and school district, because they know, you guys know them a lot better than we do, or you guys have a lot better of a relationship. So definitely using your high school counselors as a sounding board to figure out what you're looking for in college, what you're wanting to get out, or how to even search again. And also just looking at different colleges' information sessions or booths when we can normally come in person, so meeting a lot of different schools in person as well. And as also word of mouth is really important. If you know a friend of yours, big sister or big brother's big sibling, went to a college, then talk to them to get kind of a feel for that as well.
All right. Does anyone else on the panel want to add to that?
I would say definitely start your search as early as possible. I think that students get to the senior year, don't necessarily know what major they want to go or what they want to do, with their career later on, and that's totally okay. But what I'm trying to say is look for what options and what possibilities each individual school that you might be interested in applying to may have. And starting that search as early as possible is definitely key to being as prepared as possible when you're ready to apply for college.
Great, thank you everyone. And I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of information too. We as counselors have already met with our juniors in a group to start this process, start the research process, tell our students what some of our resources are, and that's something that we plan to do throughout the remainder of the year. So thank you very much. So now I'm going to pose our second question to Sophia. And Sophia, I'm going to pick on you because you are St. Joe's and I graduated from Temple, so not too far. So this is a question that I also get. I've been a counselor for 14 years, and every single year I get this question, and that is, how many schools should I apply to, or should our students apply to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're going to hear a different amount of numbers of schools that you should be applying to from anyone that you speak to, whether it's your school counselor, your parents, your families, us as admission counselors. I always think kind of a safe bet is like 5-6 schools, right? But then you're hearing of these students who are applying to 10-15 schools, and you're like, why am I not ahead of the game? And that's not the case. Or I'm only applying to 1 or 2 schools. Is that enough? At the end of the day, I think one of the most important things when building your college list is that you should be so excited about that college list, right? So no matter which school it is that you are admitted, deferred, possibly denied, waitlisted to, the schools on that list, you should be able to see yourself going there, right? So you've done that research, you've done those visits, whether that's virtual or in person. But I would say probably a safe amount, about 5 or 6 schools. I feel like that's going to provide you with enough opportunity. It's something that's not overwhelming, right? When you hear of those students that are applying to those 10-15 schools, it's like, how are they managing all of that? When I think even managing 5 to 6 can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming, because one thing you're going to hear in the admission world, and I know that my colleagues are going to agree with me and probably laugh and nod their heads, is it depends on the schools that you're applying to, right? The answer to all of the questions you'll hear tonight probably is going to be, it depends. And so definitely get comfortable with that answer. I understand it could definitely be frustrating, but it does all depend on the individual institutions that you'll be applying to. But to fully answer that question, about 5 to 6, I would say, is a safe bet.
Great, thank you. Does any other one of our panelists have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I'll quickly jump in and just mention that I think that being able to see yourself where you apply is so important. Every now and then you'll hear a student say, "Oh, well, I apply there, but I'm not actually going to go." And it's like, well, then why did you apply? That's taking a spot from someone else. That's money, that's time, that's energy. So I would say certainly do your research. Consider all your options for sure. But when you're actually applying, I think that you should truly see yourself going. And personally, I don't really like the concept of a safety or a match or reach. I think every school that you apply to should be a first choice for you.
Great, thank you.
And I'm actually going to pick this next question is actually going to piggyback on some of those answers. And Mr. Mario, we're going to start with you first. But what are the best ways to really stay informed about schools that you're applying to, especially during this virtual time, and just kind of really getting that feel for the schools that you're applying to?
Yeah, sure. So, one of the biggest factors that has been taken out of the college search experience, or at least the traditional college search experience, is the going to campus, right? Visiting the campus of the school that you might be interested in. And, a lot of schools have adapted to include virtual opportunities, whether they are via a virtual campus tour or a virtual information session. Some schools, may have a limited amount of in-person visits as well. So, it goes back to that, doing that research, right? Seeing what each individual institution that you might be interested in applying to is doing in regards to COVID-19, and adapting to how they serve those prospective students that might be interested in applying. So definitely for sure, one of the best ways to stay connected, or at least try to get connected with an institution, is making sure you sign up for the mailing list if they have one, making sure that you visit their website, the admissions website specifically, and see what they offer online, whether it is a open house, a high school spring break, or if they have daily information sessions, and definitely sign up for those opportunities for sure. So that would be my recommendation for those students who are looking to kind of see whether or not that school that you might be interested in applying to might be a good fit.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I think I'll add, as well as obviously, every college's mailing list to get information and to see what each college has to offer, but also to reach out to your specific admissions counselor. Obviously, University of South Carolina, Will would be your counselor because he is for Washington, D.C. For here at Mason, all of us counselors work in the Northern Virginia area, so any of us can help you. But really reaching out to your specific admissions counselor to get more information, again, if you have any questions, or again, just wanting to get more information on what each school has to offer. And then you have a really great point of contact as well for if in the future you have any questions during the application process.
And if I could just really quickly add, please check your email. It's never too early to start checking your email. And a couple quick notes about that. Parents, we appreciate all that you do to help your students stay on track, but a lot of messages, especially, kind of the deeper you go into the process, may start going to the student only. So the student really needs to also be checking their email. And secondly, I would suggest, if you haven't done so already, creating a college-only email account. So sometimes messages don't go through to the high school accounts. I know for whatever reason, the school systems in Northern Virginia don't like the messages we send at South Carolina. So if you want to hear from us, and we hope you do, I would really suggest creating a different email address. And then if you're still using the same email address you created in middle school or whatever, it may be time to make one that's a little bit more professional, that's for college only.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely agree with Will about the email addresses and checking email. Now that we've been going virtual, or we have been virtual all year, we're hoping that our students are now getting to that habit of checking their email more so this year. So that's great information. Thank you. So I'm going to pose our next question. Actually, Will, since you answered last, let's keep going. What factors do you think our students should consider when they are trying to find the right fit for a school?
Yeah, I think that focusing on fit, in my opinion, is where every college search should really begin and end. So I say start with the student. Where are you going to be happy as a person? Because I think at the end of the day, if you're happy as a person, there's a pretty good chance you're going to do well academically. And if you're succeeding in the classroom, I think there's a pretty good chance you're going to have a happy, fulfilling, successful life. So I think that where this kind of goes sideways is when people start with outcomes and say, okay, to have a good career in X field, you need to go to this school. Okay, well, how are we going to get you into this school? But that doesn't take into consideration, is the student even going to like that school? So I think we could really start with the student. And again, if we say, where are you going to be happy as a person, I think the rest is really going to fall into place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Does anyone, any other of our panelists like to tackle that question? No? Okay.
All right, and I am going to ask the next question, and this is actually one of the bigger questions that we have coming just from parents, because a lot of times this may be a first-time student that's going to college, or just really whenever it comes to any part of the process. But what role should parents play in this admissions process and this application process? And Ms. Amanda, we'll start back with you.
Awesome, thanks. I think parents really, we like to say that parents should really have a supporting role in the whole process. We definitely don't mind getting emails from parents, but really they should have really a good supporting role in the process, because we want the student to be the primary driver and really own their own process within their whole process of searching for a college, whether it be at the very beginning or throughout the whole admissions process. So we really like to see parents, supporting their child in every way that they can, but really the student should be the primary driver of their own process. But we definitely love to see parents having that more supporting role.
Perfect. Does anyone else have anything?
Yeah, I mean, to go off of that, I completely agree. The student should be in the driver's seat, right? And parents, family should be in the passenger seat, kind of guiding them through when to hit the brakes and when to hit the gas, right? And so when it comes to this process, you have to think of it as students. This is your next 4 years, right? It's not mom and dad, it's not legal guardian, it's not grandparents, not older siblings. This is yours. So what is it that you want to be involved in? So it kind of touches back to the question previously of like finding the right fit school for you, right? As much as your family knows you, you really have to trust yourself and trust your gut and know when, yes, this totally feels right. And yeah, I don't really know about this. Maybe I need to learn a little bit more, or I just know that this isn't for me. And so definitely echoing what Amanda said, we really do love seeing that support from parents, but students really should be the ones that are touching base with us as admission counselors, reaching out and asking those questions about your, questions about programs, questions about how you get involved on the campus. What is student life like? What's the typical day for a student? Those questions should definitely be coming from students and not so much from parents. If there's typically where I see parents coming in a lot is if it comes to finances. Sometimes, yes, the student, and I do think the student should absolutely be involved in financial conversations. It is so important for them to be involved in this. But I do typically see, those questions definitely come more from parents, which is absolutely understandable, right? But otherwise, definitely that student is kind of taking the lead.
I will say this just to kind of piggyback off of everyone about how important it is for the student, because for the student to do their research, and again for the parents to be supportive. But Miss Sophia, I don't know if you remember, but whenever we had our virtual visit, one of the things that we asked about, one of the things I asked about was a good place to get a cheesesteak up in Philadelphia. And so that's one of the things that I believe students should ask for. They should, just kind of figure out things like that are around the area, things that are going to kind of make their time more enjoyable. So that's one of the things that, again, the students should really take care of, but parents should please be a good support system as well.
I'm curious to know, Sophia, how you answer that question, because I know my favorite.
I'm stuck between Jim's on South Street and Alessandro's.
Both very acceptable answers. And I agree. Okay, so I'm going to jump a little bit, and I kind of want to move the conversation to now talking about preparation and how we can start preparing our students. And our first question that I would like to pose, and I'll pose this to Amanda, is at this time in the year, what is your best advice when it comes to standardized testing? And maybe if you can speak about maybe timelines, or panelists, if you guys all have your thoughts and what your schools are doing, moving forward about, those policies.
Yeah, I think at this time, the biggest thing that we can say is don't panic, don't worry. We completely, I can speak for myself. I think I can speak for all the panelists. When we know students might not be able to take the SAT or ACT because of the pandemic, because tests keep getting canceled or full or whatnot. So I would just say don't panic and don't worry. Mason, we have been for the last 10 years or so, we've been score optional. So we don't require our students to take the SAT or ACT to submit an application. Again, that's just our policy. Other schools might be different. But again, at this time, it's really don't panic and don't worry, because we know students might not be able to take tests. So definitely do not worry, do not panic if you can't take any tests for, ever, or if the next test isn't until April, May, June, July. But definitely do not worry, do not panic if you can't take those tests.
I would also kind of add on to that, your safety and health comes first. And I feel like that's something that's obviously, like, in general, yeah, but now that we're in a pandemic, it definitely adds a lot more to that. So you shouldn't be putting yourself at risk or your family at risk if that is something that is, worrisome for you to take a test. A lot of schools have moved to a test optional policy or test flexible policy or test blind policy or test something policy, so that way it shows you that we understand what is going on, and also understanding that it's a very big piece of access too, because now that, yes, there may be some tests available, now they're getting canceled left and right, and so we have to think of that piece of it as well. And so talk with your schools about, what their test policies are. For St. Joseph specifically, we're test optional. We've been test optional since 2014, so it's not anything new in light of COVID, but a lot of other schools, it is something new for them. And so their policies may be different from school to school, because what test optional means to me may be very different to one of our panelists here today as well. So asking what those policies mean specifically to that school is also going to help you through that process as well.
Yeah, and I'll just note that I agree with everything that has been said so far. We were test optional this year, and for us, optional truly meant optional. I know many, oftentimes students and parents would ask, so can I really not submit the test score? And for us this year, the answer was yes. Now, moving forward, we don't know. We want to know because we know that you want to know, but that's not necessarily a decision that we can make in the admissions office. That happens much higher up at the university. So we know that you want to know, and we're doing everything that we can to get that answer, but we don't know yet. So I think it's awesome that so many schools have made that announcement for next year that they will continue to be test optional, but there are some schools like South Carolina and just still trying to kind of figure it out.
Great, thank you so much.
All righty, and so the next question, and Ms. Sophia, if you don't mind starting, the question is just really, since this is our junior year here at, when it comes to being a junior, what are the next steps to really prepare for college? What are, how do I let a school know I'm interested in, and when it comes to demonstrated interest, how can I really, can you explain what that means? And also, can you just let us know, how we go about that our junior year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if anything, you know, with the pandemic and how schools have had to move to a virtual platform, it's really opened up a lot of possibilities for students now. And for us admission counselors as well. You know, I cover Maryland, DC, Virginia, but I also have the South excluding Florida and a small part of Montgomery County here in Pennsylvania. So I have a large territory. And in a typical year, I'm not able to cover all of that, right? Especially the South. I typically don't really travel to down South so much. But this year, because it was virtual, I was able to hit a couple schools in Nashville. I was able to hit a couple of my schools in Georgia and Kentucky, which was really exciting because I was able to make connections with students that I haven't been able to do that before, right? And so I think now that we're going through this, and granted we don't know what the fall will look like, while I'm hopeful I'll be able to travel, I don't really know if that's going to happen. And so because of that, you know, we still might have these virtual platforms. And I think it's really great for students to be able to access these different opportunities, whether it's the virtual high school visits or going to the schools that you're interested in, go to those websites, because now we have really flushed out different opportunities for you to get connected with current students, with faculty members, with us admission counselors, and with tour guides, being able to do virtual tours, virtual information sessions. We have webinars that are geared towards the college essay writing workshop. We have ones that are geared towards, you know, the admission process as a whole and kind of demystifying it and taking away that curtain. And so it's a little overwhelming because now there's so much information out there, but it's also really great because now you really do have it at your fingertips, more so than I think we might have before. When it comes to demonstrated interest, for St. Joseph specifically, right now we're not looking at demonstrated interest, mainly because we understand that students aren't able to, not aren't able, but some are not able and some may not be comfortable with physically visiting campus. So for us, our campus is open to students. We are offering tours, but we still have multiple virtual opportunities available because we understand that there's going to be that door that some students may not be able to open. And so, but when it comes to still demonstrating your interest in some way, if you want to, or for schools that are still kind of looking at that, get connected with us. Reaching out to your admission counselors, kind of like what Amanda had mentioned earlier, and asking us those questions. And no question is a dumb question, right? Some of you are just starting this process. Some of you have started and you're feeling really comfortable, but you still might have a question of, what's psychology, right? What is criminal justice? What is that program at your institution? So ask us those questions because we are going to be here as a very strong support and resource for you, but also reaching out to your college counselors. That's what they're there for too. They know us, they've built relationships with us, so that way they can help you through this process. And you know, if there's a question that they don't know the answer to, they're going to email us, right? They're going to give us a call and be like, hey, I didn't really actually know this. This is something new to me. And it might be something new to us too. And so we'll be able to work on that together. But it's a very collaborative network that you have access to. And we really work together so that way we can be that support system for you through this process.
Would anybody else want to jump in on that?
I think I'll talk a little bit kind of on the opposite side of like what you guys can do while you're still in high school and kind of like in more of the classroom setting, is really just kind of don't take your eye off the ball in senior year. You know, we still want to see you guys doing your best and applying yourself to your classes in senior year. Obviously, we know senior year, your junior year, sophomore year, you know, we understand that things look different because we're still virtual, but we still want to see you guys do the best you can. We still want to see those grades doing well. So definitely not kind of letting your foot off the gas during your junior year, the end of your junior year, and into your senior year.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, I am going to pose our next question to Mario. Mario, in your opinion or your thoughts on this, how is a transcript looked at, and how do colleges look at honors versus dual enrollment versus AP classes?
Yeah, so one of the biggest decisions that you will make during the application process is selecting your major. And selecting a program that maybe has a particular school within the institution. And some schools, there some admissions put you right into the school. For example, you're applying to the College of Business for some institutions. At Virginia Tech, you apply directly to the major. So that's something different that we do. And so what that means to us is that we look specifically at the classes that you had taken from 9th to 12th grade, seeing what rigor you have taken. And what rigor means to us is honors, AP, dual enrollment, IB classes, but we evaluate everything within the context of your high school profile. So seeing what type of classes your high school offers. And so, with us specifically, we won't necessarily, or you won't be at disadvantage if for some reason your high school does not offer a specific AP class because you weren't able to take it, right? So when it comes to us, dual enrollment AP classes is really looked at on a positive light because those are rigorous courses, traditional rigorous courses. And also you're able to potentially bring in college level credits already as you go to the institution that you select to go and attend to. So the high school transcript is definitely something that we look for specifically, and for a lot of purposes is probably the most important thing that we're going to be looking at when it comes to the admissions process to see whether or not you're going to be able to be successful at our institution. And I'm sure my other colleagues can share their opinions as well in regards of the importance of the high school transcript and seeing the type of classes that you have taken, and showing that you as a student, you are able to challenge yourself academically, and as you challenge yourself academically, you're able to be successful.
Just to kind of expand on that question a little bit, and I'm going to open this up to anyone who would like to share. Can you speak a little bit about the transcript and our students challenging themselves with the honors and AP classes and everything versus or also being able to do well in those classes? Because I think our students they understand that yes, the colleges they're looking for the honors classes, they're looking for the AP classes, and that's what they sign up for. But we as counselors also have to make sure that our students have a balanced schedule, that they're not taking on too much or overwhelming themselves. So because what we don't want to see is the uptick in the honors and AP classes, but then the downgrade in the grade. So and I see a lot of nodding heads. So can you speak to that as well?
First, I guess. What I think with definitely you hit it right on the dot. Balance, that's the key word, right? You don't want to have all APs because it will look good, right, on your transcript, and then just have a mixed amounts of C's and D's. No one wants that, okay? So finding that balance between those important classes and selecting and being strategic on what classes are going to help you be a competitive applicant is something that you and your counselor can definitely work together on. Definitely, on our end, we want to see students challenge themselves, and a B is so much better in the AP or dual enrollment class than you just sitting comfortably with all standard courses, right? So you do want to challenge yourself academically, but you do want to find that balance, so maybe a half and half, test it out, see how it goes. But making sure that you're able to take advantage of all the different resources that are also in place, from your teachers to your peers as well. Finding that support system that will help you achieve all your academic goals is very important as well. So making sure that you use all those resources is definitely key as well.
Yeah, to go off of that, it's finding that balance. It's about finding, you want to challenge yourself appropriately. So say that you do really well in your English and history classes, but say that math and science, no, right? So you're not going to want to just immediately jump into taking an AP Chem and an AP Calculus and an AP Stat and be like, okay, I have all these APs on my transcript now, but now you're getting D's and C's. that's not going to look good. However, if you do want to take the AP Lang and you want to take AP US History because you know that you do well in those classes in general, then yeah, absolutely. And so know where your strengths are. I think that's another piece of it that's going to help you kind of figure out, okay, well, what does challenge myself appropriately mean? Know where your strengths are, and kind of go and follow that lead. And that doesn't mean don't take AP Calc because you want that extra challenge, but maybe don't take it all on top of each other, because that's where, you know, that's where we start to see, okay, this student is heavy loading on their AP and honors classes, but we're really starting to see that downtick in their grades when it comes to those AP classes. And so it is kind of a balancing game, but you really have to go back and kind of reflect on what your strengths are, and you kind of have an idea of that now, especially as juniors. You're kind of like, all right, I know that I love my mathematics classes and English is just not it. Whereas, yeah, granted, it's not like you can't take English, but you know, just kind of follow those strengths that you have.
Poppy? Great, thank you.
All right, and I'm going to skip a little bit of the question that we have because we actually covered a lot of that information in that session right there, so that was perfect. But this question, and Mr. Will, if you don't mind jumping in on this, whenever it comes to letters of recommendation, what's kind of your advice when it comes to that? Who should, as students, who should they ask for them? Are there specific teachers, maybe a mentor, someone outside of the school, that they should ask for letters of recommendation for?
Sure. So I'll do my best to answer that question, but some of the other panelists may be a little bit better suited because we do not use letters of recommendation for general admission to the university. However, we do use letters of recommendation heavily for the honors college, and at South Carolina honors is a pretty big deal. So when I'm looking at an honors application and we're reviewing those letters of recommendation, we really want to see someone who knows you well. So if that's your counselor, that's wonderful. If that's a teacher, that's great. If that's a coach, that's great. I think generally it would be best if it comes from someone in your school, but you know, I think if I was going to apply to college, I would say, you know, who knows me, because we really want some insight beyond what we already know. You know, we know what you do, but why do you do what you do? Those are the sorts of things that we want to really kind of come through in those letters of recommendation. And I think sometimes students are kind of shy. They don't always want to brag. Sometimes they don't realize how great they really are. And that's when the teacher, the counselor, whoever is going to say, this student is a rock star. This is the best person I've seen in my entire year, my entire career, which obviously we don't see that often, but when we do, that really stands out. So that's kind of our approach for the honors college, but again, we're not using them for admission to the university, and that's not because we don't value the opinion of your counselors and teachers, but for us, we just have so much volume. It's just not something that we can realistically take into consideration, and we do want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah, I think I can talk a little bit about it too. So here at Mason, we holistically review every application. So if you submit letters of recommendation, we will read them, and we will read every single one that is submitted, whether it's 1 or 5 of them. I have read applications where somebody did submit 5 letters of recommendation, which was great to read because I was able to see how fantastic this student was. But really, we like to see letters of recommendations, again, from teachers, counselors, people in your community, pastors, coaches. We just ask that you don't submit a letter of recommendation from a family member. But we really kind of look at 3 P's that we talk about: positive, professional, and personal. So if someone, you know, if you don't know a teacher that well, or you just sat in the back of a class from some teacher and they don't know you that well, then maybe they might not be the best person to talk about because they don't know you as well. But as long as they can talk about you in a positive light, in a professional light, and from a personal standpoint as well, that's who we recommend.
To quickly add to that as well, when it comes to you know, who should be writing this letter of recommendation for you when it comes to teachers, some schools, it may depend on the program that you're applying to. So if you are specifically interested in the sciences, if you're specifically interested in the arts, you might want to have an art teacher, you might want to have a science teacher, right, to to kind of give some insight into how you did in those specific classes. But also don't be afraid to reach out to teachers where the class itself was one that you struggled in, but that you worked really hard in. I've seen a lot of those, especially in the last year, I would say, where it was a student had a recommendation letter from a teacher in a class where they had a lower grade, but the teacher just spoke so highly of the students' work ethic and how they really were dedicated to doing well in that class. And sometimes things just don't connect, right? But if a teacher can talk about that and your progress in the classroom, that's also a really good look into, you know, that student's work ethic, that student's dedication to the classroom, their commitment to their academic performance.
That was perfect. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. So now we're just going to shift gears again and actually talk about applications, right? Because I think that is kind of the topic that a lot of our students are eager to hear about. So the first question that I'm going to pose to everyone, whoever wants to jump in to take this one, it is something that we have already gone over once with our students, but it's always good to hear multiple times, is the difference between early decision, early action, regular decision, and then rolling decision. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I jumped in on that. So at Virginia Tech, we offer early decision, early action, regular decision. Other institutions may and the distinction and knowing the difference between all four of those different options is very important because you want to be strategic and when you apply to different institutions. For example, first off, we have early decision, which typically and traditionally is a binding deadline. And what the word binding basically means is that if you apply to any school during a binding deadline and receive an offer letter, there should be a mutual understanding between the student and the university that if offered admissions, you'll be attending and enrolling at that institution. So typically a binding deadline should be reserved to only one school, your number one school. So definitely don't apply to 5 different schools during a binding deadline. It's not recommended. It makes everyone's lives very difficult afterwards, but definitely apply to your number one school if you're looking at applying early decision. Then we have early action, which tends to be a priority deadline for a lot of institutions that do offer early action. And then we also have regular decision. Some schools may only offer early decision, which is binding, and regular decision, which is non-binding. So do keep in mind of the different deadlines that each individual school offers. In regards to rolling admissions specifically, that basically means that whenever you're ready to submit an application, you're more than welcome to do so, and the institution will review your application as it has come in to the system and don't necessarily have a specific deadline or timeline attached to it. However, if you're applying early decision, early action, or regular decision, do keep in mind that there's set deadlines that you need to follow in order to complete all the materials that each individual school has set in place for their admissions timeline.
Great, thank you so much. And actually, I'm just going to go right to the next question. Sorry, Ms. McClellan, just because I feel like they kind of do go together. We often, and when I say often, almost every student, at least that I've met with, asks me this question or these series of questions. And I'm going to, actually, Maria, I'm going to have you take this one as well, or to start us off. Should I apply early? Will it help me get admitted? And how do you look at the early pool of applicants? And if you need me to repeat that, that was 3 in 1, let me know.
So as I mentioned earlier, you definitely want to apply early decision to only one institution, typically your number one school, right? The only downfall to early decision that you have to keep in mind is that some institutions may not be able to provide you with financial aid or scholarship or award packages when you receive your, hopefully an offer. So you do have to keep that in mind as well. Typically, I recommend students applying either early action, at least for us, Virginia Tech specifically, But if the school does not offer early action, then definitely apply regular decision for sure. There's no difference between applying early decision and early action, or even regular decision, depending on the school that you might be applying to. Applying early decision could potentially give you an advantage, or could potentially not give you an advantage. For us specifically, early decision, we only select about 10% of our incoming class when it comes to early decision. Early action, that's where we select about 80% of our incoming class. So truly, for us, we really want for the students to have that option to truly explore all the different options that you have on the table in order for you to make a well-informed decision into what institution best fits the career path that you want to take, the internships that you want to have, all the different opportunities that you want to have both inside and outside the classroom. So me personally giving you this advice, I will definitely encourage everyone to apply to a non-binding deadline, only because it gives you that option to have until May 1st, which is the national deadline, to decide on whether or not that institution is really the right fit for you.
Thank you. Any of our other panelists want to tackle that question as well, or have any thoughts?
I can jump in real quick. At Mason, we only have early action and regular decision, so we don't have a binding deadline. But we review early action and regular decision applicants the very same. In terms of, I always recommend students, if they can, to apply early action, because one, you'd get your decision earlier, but also if you're applying to our honors college, you're automatically reviewed in early action, and you're reviewed for merit-based scholarship as well in early action, and we can't guarantee scholarships in regular decision. So that's why I always recommend early action if possible.
Yeah, to go off that as well, this is where the "it depends" answer comes into play, because for every school it's definitely going to depend. Like for St. Joseph's, we have early decision 1, early action, early decision 2, and regular decision. My best advice when it comes to figuring out what schools have what, make a spreadsheet of the schools that you have, what their decision deadlines are, scholarship deadlines, all of that, because it's going to help keep you organized. But going back to the question of should I apply early? Some schools it will, as Amanda was just saying, you'll have a better chance for merit scholarship and early action versus the regular decision pool. But otherwise, they're basically looking at it the same. For St. Joseph's, we're looking at the applicants the same. You're still going to be equally considered for merit-based scholarship regardless of when you apply. Same thing when it comes to financial aid. Same thing when it comes to admission in general. But that answer is really going to depend on the school. But I think it also depends on what your timeline is. Say that you really struggled in your freshman and sophomore year, but junior year you found your stride and you want us to see your senior year progress as well, then maybe you want to wait until the regular decision application pool, right? So that way we can see those senior year grades. Or if you're like, no, I want to have this done and get my decisions early and have the second half of my senior year to, 1, enjoy, but 2, have that time to really weigh out the factors at your other schools, then yes, apply early. When it comes to early decision for us as well, I mean, we're looking at the students on the same exact playing field, so I can't say it's going to definitely guarantee admission or it's going to guarantee that you get X amount of money. That's not the case, at least again, not for St. Joseph's, but definitely a question you'd want to ask your individual schools of what these different deadlines are and what they mean to those institutions.
Yeah, and I was just going to add one more thing regarding deadlines. Please keep track of the deadlines. I hate to sound snarky or take all the fun out of the process, but please watch those deadlines because, again, like in South Carolina, we have a process, we have deadlines, and when you miss those deadlines and students reach out and say, hey, here's my application, well, there's really nothing I can do. And that's not because I don't want to help you, but when operations, shuts down those platforms, I'm locked out of it too. So, don't just assume that your rep can work miracles. We'll do our best, but we have a boss, we have people that we answer to. We can't necessarily override some of those deadlines. And perhaps that's why it's a good idea to not apply to 20 different colleges, because when you start spreading yourself too thin, it becomes really easy to miss deadlines. And I don't just mean the application. It could be a credentials deadline. It could be a scholarship deadline. I mean, there's so many deadlines that follow the actual application, and you have to keep track of all that. So again, please stay on top of it. Please check your email. Please submit materials the way colleges ask you to do so. Like for us, you self-report that transcript, and you self-report your supplemental materials. And often students would, again, just send it by email. Oh, here you go. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I truly cannot upload this. I'm based in Virginia. I'm not on campus, so it's not like I can just print this off and take it downstairs, which is how it worked at my previous institution. So I don't mean to rant, but everyone's life is a lot easier if you do follow those instructions that the colleges have. And again, we're happy to answer your questions. Don't get me wrong. Like, if you have questions, please reach out. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. We just can't work miracles. Or at least I can't. Maybe my colleagues are better. I don't know.
Great, thank you so much. I agree with everything that you all said, and especially about the spreadsheets with deadlines. We often recommend that spreadsheets, put it in calendars. And another piece of advice too, before we move on from this topic, is oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought because I just heard my daughter crying. I'll come back to it. It literally just escaped my mind.
All right, so the next question I'm going to ask, Miss Amanda, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. It's going to be concerning extracurricular activities. How does that look on resumes? What are the weights of certain extracurricular activities, maybe organizations, and then maybe compared to other ones such as sports and other things on your college application?
Yeah, so we definitely review your extracurriculars if you have them listed in your Common App, or if you submit a resume with all of your extracurriculars, activities, everything you're involved in. We review them, but they're not going to make or break your application. I'll use a reference that I'm stealing from my supervisor, actually. She says that the extracurriculars are like sprinkles on your application sundae. For us, that we like to see them, we review them, but they're not the most important thing in the application. Not an activity or an extracurricular, again, here at Mason, it carries any more weight than another extracurricular or club or sport that you're involved in. Again, I think this is a question that says it depends on every other school that you apply to. But yes, here at Mason, we review them, but they are the sprinkles on the sundae of the application. But we really like to see them. We want to know what you're involved in outside of the classroom, especially if you founded a really cool club in your school that's really popular, like esports or something that's really random that we don't really see very often. So we really love to see those, and we like to see them and review them.
Yeah, to go off of that as well, I think if anything, it kind of comes down to quality over quantity. While I would say, yes, I'm definitely impressed that some students have 10, 15 things that they're involved in. Sometimes they're just a member, right? They're just, I'm involved in this. But what is it that you've been able to do within that organization? Have you received, are you in a leadership position? Have you been involved in this group for X amount of years? Or is it something that you just now got involved in your senior year right before you submitted your application? So those are the things that we do take a look at, right? But then also thinking kind of outside of the box of, sports and clubs in the school, and service and volunteer opportunities. What are your home obligations? Are you the oldest sibling of 4 other siblings, and your parents have to work long hours, and so you're left with a lot of responsibility in the household where you have to make sure that your younger siblings are doing their homework and driving them to their extracurricular activities and balancing all of that with your own activities and your schoolwork. You can put that on there, and I highly recommend that you do, because that gives us a little bit more insight into, maybe you don't have Maybe you don't even have 5 extracurriculars because you have that heavy responsibility at home, or maybe you're working 2 jobs. Those are all things you want to put on that activities list, because it gives us further insight into what your responsibilities are. It also shows us your character. It shows us that you take responsibility seriously, that you do have these leadership qualities, even though you might not have a leadership role. You're not the president, you're not the founder of XYZ Club. You do have these other responsibilities that still show those characteristics.
That is perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I did remember what I was going to say. So as soon as Mr. McClam asked the next question, I remembered. Please, guys, do not wait until the night before to submit your applications either. Okay, you never know what's going to happen with technical glitches and everything. It may not go through, so please do not wait until the night before. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm just kind of going through our list here because we are just covering a lot, just in a lot of the answers that you guys are giving, which is great. So I'm going to pose this to Will. Will, in your opinion, or with University of South Carolina, how important is the essay?
Yeah, so I mean, we could have an entire panel discussion on the essay. It's such a fun topic, but it's really important. I mean, we do use a holistic review. We're going to look at all the different materials that you send us, and the essay is a big part of that. Now, to take one step back, I think it really does, at least for us, begin and end with the transcript. You know, we need to be in the ballpark on the transcript, looking at the courses and the grades. I mean, at the end of the day, that's so much. But the essay provides really important context. So previously I said, we know what you do, but we don't know why you do what you do. So the essay is your voice. You know, what's your tone? If you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny, because I think that sometimes students, you know, Google how to write a college essay, and then that doesn't sound like who you actually are. So I think my biggest piece of advice on the essay is make sure that it is actually your voice. Yes, have people take a look at it, but don't have so many people edit your essay that it's no longer yours, because what we want to know is, who are you? I mean, when we're reviewing applications, the essay is so much fun because it really just allows us to really have a better sense of who you are. Again, it's your chance to speak directly with whoever is reviewing your application. So from that perspective, you know, I've heard colleagues say that the essay is medicine for the sick. So if a student is borderline, it can be invaluable in providing that context. However, unfortunately, at least for us, an essay is not going to raise the dead. So we do need to be in the ballpark as far as the transcript is concerned.
For us, we don't necessarily require an essay. It is 4 short personal statements, each of them being no longer than 120 words max each. And for us, it could take a traditional offer student to a waitlist, or you can take a traditional waitlist student to an offer. So it is extremely important for us that you, as a student, put the time and the patience when it comes to writing your responses to those 4 short personal statements, especially because both the Common App and the Coalition application have their own essay, and we don't review them. We don't require them, we don't review them. So the only way for you to have a voice in your application is through your responses to those 4 short personal statements, where we had everyone in our community review them, from professors to faculty members to staff members all over campus, representing different areas and departments across the university. So they truly are important in our admissions process, at least. Not to put any extra pressure on you or anything like that, but you know, we do want to get to know who you are outside the classroom, what makes you outside the classroom, and that definitely, that is the way for you to truly share that with us.
Yeah, to echo both Mario and Will, and some things that Will said about, you know, being your authentic self and making sure that it's your voice. I think something that sometimes gets lost in the sauce when it comes to writing the essay is creativity behind it. This is probably one of the first times that you are being asked to write about yourself, and that can be a little bit daunting. And there's also no structure to the essay. It doesn't have to be, you know, the typical, I don't even know if they still use this anymore, the sandwich or the hamburger, where it's like the intro, the meat of the burger, and then the conclusion as the bottom bun. And if that's not something that you use anymore, I'm totally dating myself. But when it comes to the essay, you really can write it in any format that you want. You know, if you're a poet, if you really enjoy, you know, screenwriting, and you want to kind of write it in the form of a screenplay, they do it. If those are your talents and you have that creative skill, do it. If you don't do something that is out of your comfort zone. Like, if you want to be funny in your essay, there can definitely be humor in your essay. But if you know that you're not naturally a funny person, that may fall flat, right? So definitely go with your strengths, go with those creative skills that you have, and think outside of the box when it comes to your essay, because that can add that creative punch to it. But definitely sticking to what's true to you and having that authentic voice come through, as Will was saying.
Yeah, I think one last thing to highlight, I guess to echo what all my colleagues have said, is definitely we remember and know those original and fun essays. When we get those, we will pass them around the office and have every single one of us read it, because we just love to see those original and fun essays. But also, the essay is a chance for you to talk to us directly. So if you want to mention, you know, a D that happened on your transcript and want to explain that, the essay is a great chance for you to do that. So if you want to talk about something that's happened, or just, you know, talk to us, that the essay is your chance. So definitely the essay is really important, but it's not necessarily required. But definitely use that as a chance to give us your voice and your personality, and basically tell us whatever you want to tell us.
Great, thank you so much. That was some wonderful information.
All right, and we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and then we're going to talk about the acceptance. Kind of what's the process and what we're going to be doing after the acceptance. And so, Ms. Sophia, I want to start with you, and if you don't mind me asking, what is the process if I don't know what I want to study, or if I don't know what I want to major in? What's kind of what would I do in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So most, if not all, of your schools are going to have some form of an undecided major, whether that's completely just undeclared, or if it's undecided within a certain discipline in that institution. So for St. Joseph's, we kind of have both, but I would probably say it's more leaning towards the discipline route. So undecided business, undecided humanities, undecided natural sciences. So say that you absolutely love the sciences and you've done so well in all of them in high school, but you're just like, but I don't know if I want to pick between biology and physics just yet. I'm not ready for that commitment. That's completely okay. And that's where us as admission counselors come into play. But it really comes into play more so once you are a student on XYZ institution's campus, because there's so many resources that are available for you to help guide you through that process. So whether it be an academic advisor, so you'll most likely have a faculty member within that department or that discipline that will help guide you through your first year or so to kind of see, okay, I'm really enjoying these classes. You know what, this just isn't for me. Maybe I do need to go with biology instead of physics, or vice versa. With schools, it may depend on it will depend on the school. It will depend on the school, the timeline that you have. So do you have until the end of your sophomore year to declare a major? Do you have to have a declared major when you enter that institution? Or is it that every single student going into that school goes in undecided? I know that Holy Cross is one of those schools that, yes, every single student is coming in undecided because they really focus on the exploration of the student's first year, and to have that opportunity to see what classes really speak to them and what may not. And so that's what, again, as admission counselors, we're here for, to inform you of those resources that are available on that campus, but to also let you know what that means to your specific application. For St. Joseph's in particular, it does not affect your application. When it comes to our admission process, we are admitting students to the university as a whole. So you can put that you are interested in biology on your application, and then if you decide to switch to marketing, go for it. That's something that it's very easily done at St. Joseph's, to be able to switch a major or maybe even double major in two different schools on our campus. It's something that's very feasible, but that may not be the case with other schools. Some schools are, you know, direct entry programs that are a little bit more stringent, and like especially if you're thinking about, let's say, nursing, some schools will have a very competitive nursing program. So it's not like if you are thinking about nursing, you need to put that on your application now, because say that you put undecided and then you're at that institution and you're like, okay, yeah, I do want to do nursing. You might not be able to at that point. So again, it depends on the school, but something that you kind of want to have an idea of what your plan is, so that way you can ask your schools, what does undecided mean, and what are my options when it comes to the application process, but then further down the road as well.
I think something I'll add too is, if it's okay if you don't know what you want to study. Majority of high school students don't know what they want to study at all. I know when I went into college, I was a biology major, and then I quickly realized I did not want to be biology, so I switched to anthropology, which is a very, very different discipline. But it's okay that if you don't know what you want. But again, kind of echoing what Sophia said, it depends on what school that you're looking to, when you can change your major, if you can change your major in the application process, or even after you're accepted, or when you're a student. So definitely ask those questions. Again, there is no dumb question in college admissions. Please ask all of the questions.
Yeah, I like to tell students that, in my opinion, you're too young to sell your soul to any major or any profession or any program at this point. I mean, if you have an idea of what you want to do, that's absolutely fine, but you don't have to be an expert in that yet. And I think that comes up a lot when students are saying, you know, hey, I'm really interested in business, so should I start taking business courses in high school? And if you have time to explore some electives, sure, go for it. But at least what we would rather see is that you continue to do well in those core subject areas, because that's going to be applicable to any program that you go continue on into. So that math, science, English, social studies, I'm leaving something out, foreign language, you know, those core subjects, that is really where you should be focusing, because again, you can apply that to anything. So just don't feel like you have to be an expert yet. And last but not least, just because this always causes confusion, on our application, we do ask that you select a first and a second choice major, but you're not actually applying to that major. And I recognize that's really confusing, but that's just to give us an idea of what programs are going to be popular. So you will still have some flexibility if you were to come to South Carolina, with two exceptions, nursing and business. That doesn't mean it's impossible, but it is a little bit more challenging, at least for us.
That's awesome. We greatly appreciate that.
Okay, I'm going to pose our next question to Amanda, since you're down the street. Amanda, does where students live or go to high school affect their chances of getting in?
Simple answer, no. So we review every single applicant in high school equally. Again, we are reviewing each applicant in context of their own school. So what Oakton might offer in terms of academics might be very different than what George Mason High School offers. So we're reviewing each applicant in the context of their school, but we don't have quotas that we have to hit for either major or in-state versus out-of-state. So very simply, no, we review everyone equally.
Okay, anyone else on the panel like to offer their insight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it might have been Mario who mentioned this earlier, but we receive that school profile from every single applicant, even if we have 5-10 applicants from that school. Every single one will come with a school profile, so that we are able to identify, what your curriculum is, what the average GPA is, test score, all of that. So we are looking at your application in the context of your high school. We are never going to compare one student to the next, even within that high school, and we're definitely not going to compare you to a student from another high school that's down the road. And so no, I would say it really doesn't matter. That school profile is just to allow us to understand your school's curriculum and to allow us to understand that students and how that curriculum impacts the student. And how they've approached it, whether it goes back to the rigor idea and all of that again. But yes, no, I would say that no, it doesn't matter, you know, what high school you attend. It doesn't matter what state you are coming from. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to every single university, we want to have a representative student body, and that does come from a geographical standpoint as well. And so yes, there's going to be institutional goals and that they are looking to meet each year. And sometimes where the students are coming from is part of that, but I know that at the end of the day, we want our student bodies to be representative of everyone, and so that is just kind of a small piece of that.
I would like to add that, contrary to popular belief, we don't have a quota in how many students we accept per high school in Nova specifically. I will like to say that we do get some of the most competitive students coming from your area. That's true, but that's because, you know, the different amount of resources that your high school offers, and that's fantastic. It's not, you know, held against you whatsoever. But for us specifically, the main thing that we're looking for is major. Major matters a lot at Virginia Tech because every year we have a limited amount of spots in individual majors. So that could determine whether or not you receive an offer letter to Virginia Tech. But again, we don't have a quota for your high school or anything like that. We do look at your, take into consideration your high school profile, mainly just to kind of see what type of rigorous classes are offered at your high school and seeing whether or not you had taken advantage of what resources your high school offers.
Yeah, I'll just quickly echo that we also do not have quotas, and the reason I bring that up, I hear it again and again and again. Oh, you only take, you know, X amount of kids from a certain school, and for us, it's just simply not true. You know, if you're admissible, we're going to admit you, plain and simple. Now, again, we want to see that you've done well in the context of your environment. We're not comparing you to other students, but we do want to see how you have done compared to what's offered to you. But there's no quotas. I promise you, there's no quotas. If I could like show you something to make you believe it, I would do it. But I promise you, there's no quotas.
Okay, thank you all for answering that question. Yes, that is a rumor that goes around year after year. So everyone, you heard it here directly. There are no quotas, for certain areas, certain schools. So thank you all for your answers.
All right, and Mr. Mario, I'm going to start here with you, if you don't mind. With my application, or with applications in general, what red flags can really bring my application to a screeching halt?
So we don't review mid-year grades at Virginia Tech. We don't look at semester or quarter grades for your senior year. They're not taken into consideration. However, in our application, there is a statement where it says that if by any reason you have failed class in your senior year, come to your final high school transcript, we have the right to rescind that admissions offer. So do keep that in mind that yes, even though we don't take into consideration senior year grades, or at least semester grades into consideration when reviewing your application, it doesn't mean that you can slack off, right? Keep making sure that you have finished your senior year strong. The other thing that is a major red flag for us would be, community standards. So we will ask you 5 questions regarding community standards where you have been suspended or if you have done anything illegally during your time in high school, and that could potentially, have an effect on your application depending on how severe the offense was. But again, we do have a committee that do review everything, and we do give you an opportunity for you to explain, the actions and what led to that decision. We want to make sure that we're able to capture everything from the student. So we do want to give you that opportunity for sure to really explain what happened and what the final outcome was and what you learned from that experience. But those will be two things that will come off, as a red flag in our application process. And I'm sure my colleagues have other, things that they also look for as well.
All right. Does anyone else want to jump in on that? Or got it covered?
Just quickly, and this is an example I had from this year actually with reading. The essay isn't going to make or break your application necessarily. However, if there is some like glaring red flags in an essay, it could make us pause. So for example, I had an application, pretty decent average application when it came to their, their academic performance and all of that, but the essay was very, very, very poorly written. And the reason I mention that is because now I'm thinking, is this student going to be ready for college level courses when it comes to, there's a lot of papers involved, right? And there's going to be a lot of writing involved in your time in college. And so that was a big, big concern. And so those are some of the things too that can possibly come into play. Like if you don't have anything on your activities list, you might be okay. Like you're probably okay. But sometimes when it comes to the writing level, that's another thing that we look at in your college essay. It's not just, yes, we want to hear your story. You want to know who you are, what's important to you, what you're passionate about, that creative style in writing, whatever it is that makes you you. But sometimes depending on it could be the content of what you're writing, but also the writing level and the writing skill can possibly come into play as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
So here's another question that we get a lot with our early action, early decision students. And I'm going to pose this to Amanda. What do students do, or what should they do if they get deferred? Is there anything that they can do to help their chances of being accepted in regular decision?
Yeah, I think some of my colleagues might be better suited to this question just because Mason does not defer applicants or their applications. So if a student applies during early action, and when we review them and we decide we need senior year mid-years to make a decision, we know those mid-years wouldn't come out till January or February. But then when we do receive them in January, February, their applications are still early action. So we do not defer applicants. So someone might be able to answer that better just because we do not defer applicants.
At Virginia Tech, we do defer students, but it will be only students who have applied during the early decision deadline. Those are the only students that could potentially receive an offer letter, be deferred, or be denied admissions. Later on, we do have early action, which is the second deadline that we offer at Tech. And so when it comes to early action specifically, there's no defer anymore. Those students who have been deferred from early decision will receive a final decision on their application come the early action deadline. In regards of extra materials to submit, I'm just going to speak on our behalf. Other institutions may be different, right? So just making sure that you do your research in regards to what they may be looking for. For us, we don't need any other materials. We don't need like recommendation letters. We don't need mid-year grades, quarter grades. Even if you were to send them in, unfortunately, that will not be looked at. Once we receive your application and you complete your self-report academic record, we pretty much have everything that we need. And just because you have been deferred from early decision to early action, it does not mean that you're not competitive. It's not a negative, decision. It just means that we want to take a second look at your application and see how your application compares to the larger applicant pool that we receive. As I mentioned earlier, around 80% of our total applicant pool is selected from early action. And about 10 to 11% get selected from early decision. So definitely don't feel discouraged. If you do have specific questions, do feel free to reach out to, that specific, admissions office and ask, those questions that are important to you. so that way you are able to stay on top of things and well informed in the process. And again, it's not necessarily a negative decision. It just means that we want to take the opportunity to have a second look at your application.
Yeah, I'll also jump in there and just say that I spoke with a lot of families who were deferred after early action, and there's kind of this feeling out there that deferred means denied. And I really want to get the message out that for us, that's simply not true. It just means that we need more time. This year, we received a significant increase in applications, and we wanted to take our time and get it right. And I think that families kind of get that once we talked about it a little bit. I said, no, it really does not mean you've been denied at all. It means that we want to give you the time that you need, the time that you deserve. And I think that kind of helped families realize that, we're not doing that to, exclude you. We want more time to make sure that we do include the correct applicants when we do release those regular decisions. So I would just say, let the process play out. We know it's difficult. We know there's just a lot goes into this, but we do appreciate your patience. And we say, try to stay positive. If you have questions, let us know. But at least for South Carolina, deferred does not mean denied. And like Mario said, we don't look at in-progress grades. We don't need letters of continued interest. If you have something new that you want to bring to the table in terms of test scores, an additional writing sample, or, new AP scores, but that probably wouldn't come out mid-year. So there's a couple things we'll take a look at, but you don't need to send a lengthy essay about your continued interest. Some schools may want that. But we do not. So, but the big thing is deferred does not mean denied.
Yeah, I would definitely echo Will on that. With St. Joseph's, the early action students can be deferred. For that, we do ask for your senior year progress and see how those grades are turning out. You're welcome to send an email of your continued interest. That's not something we require, but something we do definitely encourage is that we do offer admission interviews. They're optional, they're not required, but we do really recommend them, especially for deferred students, so that way you can have the opportunity to discuss with us, what your academic progress was, ask us questions about, why was I deferred, and what does that mean, and what do I need to do in this process. But it also allows you to advocate for yourself, and any chance that you have to advocate for yourself, whether it's coming down to your academics, whether it's coming down to who you are, and what you've shared with us within your application as a whole, or maybe there was something that wasn't in the application that you want us to know about you, please take advantage of those opportunities. And so that way we have that extra little bit of insight into what your specific situation is and who you are as a whole, because that's something that we want to know when reviewing your application. But yeah, so for us, we need those senior year grades, and we encourage and highly recommend that you take advantage of an admission interview.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, and Will, I want to start with you on this one. This is going to be talking about post-decision for the students, and this question is about gap years. So what if I decide to take a gap year, and especially in light of COVID, do you guys kind of see a trend with students taking gap years? And then the second part of that question is, what is the process if I do decide to take one?
Sure, that was a big topic, this past spring, this past fall. Hopefully things are a little bit closer to normal, but what is normal at this point? That's an entirely different conversation, I suppose. But anyway, for the first time ever last year, we did allow students to take a gap year. Historically, we had not done any sort of deferral process, but we did allow some students to take a gap year this past year. However, it was a very small amount of students who actually chose to go forward with that. So in the fall, a lot of this year's seniors were concerned that there weren't going to be enough spots, that a significant amount of students had deferred, and we didn't really see that. So we saw a small handful, but really not enough to influence this year's class. As far as what we're going to do moving forward, it's kind of like when I was talking about test optional, we don't know. I really don't know if that's going to be something that we'll continue to do moving forward. There's a lot of pieces that go into that. It's not an easy process at all. So, I don't know whether or not we're going to have that option moving forward.
Yeah, for St. Joseph's, kind of along the same lines, we had a very small amount of students that chose to take the gap year, especially in consideration with COVID from this last year. So not something that would impact this incoming class, not something I foresee impacting the next class either. We do have a process in place. It's not super formal in the sense that, you know, we simply ask that you let us know, and then the one thing that we do typically require is that, I mean, it did change in this last year, so I don't know if this is going to stay the same for this year or not, but we typically ask that you don't take college level courses elsewhere, otherwise you would have to reapply to the university as a transfer student. However, things changed this year because we wanted to make note of, you know, everything going on with COVID, and kind of allowing a little bit more flexibility in that sense. So the process did change a little bit this year. I'm not sure of what it will look like in future years, but we typically just ask that during that gap year, that it's truly a gap year for whatever reason, whether it's you're spending time abroad, you're doing some volunteer opportunity, just taking the year off and working, that you do not take those college level courses, because then it's going to have to reintroduce a new application to St. Joseph's as a transfer student.
And I'll just add, that's such a good point. At my previous institution, I'm not talking about South Carolina right now, we did have a gap year policy, and we would see students who would go off, take community college or just take credits wherever, come back in, end up having to apply as a transfer student, and then that would significantly change their financial aid package, which was a whole nother conversation. So again, that's not South Carolina. We really don't, but in general, that can be a big problem. Not only having to apply again, but does it change your funding?
Perfect. Thank you so much for that information.
Okay, so we are coming up to our question and answer from our families portion of the evening. So I do want to thank our panelists for entertaining our questions and giving our families all of this information. And I want to thank our families who are still with us. I know this has been a long night. So right now I am going to open up the chat and the mic functions. Hopefully that works. Like I said, this is my first time doing it. So the counselors and Mr. McClam and I will moderate the chat, and then we do ask if you have a question that you use the raising of the hand feature. So again, I would just like to open it up to if anyone has any questions for our panelists. Oh boy, hopefully the mic is working. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so I see one. What kind of scholarships and tuition waiver options do you have?
What kind of college scholarship and tuition do you need to have when you go to like Indian River State College?
Okay, I'm going to let our panelists answer the first question, and then we can come back to you, okay? So again, the first question, and I'll let any of our panelists answer, is what kind of scholarships and tuition waiver options, if any, do you have?
Yeah, so we offer a few waivers to students who have participated in any programs that we offer here at Virginia Tech. We offer waivers based off, if you qualify for free or reduced lunch, or if you have attended NACAT. So we do have different fee waivers that you can, apply when applying to Virginia Tech. However, when it comes to scholarships and financial aid, all first-year students must complete the general scholarship application, and that's a separate application from your admissions application. At Virginia Tech, just because you have applied for admissions does not mean that you have applied for scholarships and financial aid. All of that information in regards to scholarships and financial aid is done through the general scholarship application, which is deadline is January 22nd of your senior year, and that's where we will determine merit-based scholarships, and other scholarships that you may be eligible for.
Yeah, for St. Joseph's, when you send in an application to the university, that typically serves as your application to a merit-based scholarship. So if you are admitted, you're going to automatically be reviewed for a merit-based scholarship, and if you qualify, you'd be notified within an acceptance letter. So you would know that right out of the gate. We do offer additional scholarships based on different programs at our university, whether it's science students who are going to be science majors. We have one for our theater company scholarship, a debate and speech team scholarship. So there's quite a few that are available in that sense that are and those do have a separate application and deadline. Typically, they are January 15th, if not February 1st. And then, of course, financial aid, that comes into play as well. So if you file for St. Joseph's, you have to file the FAFSA in order to be considered for need-based aid. We do not require the CSS profile that some schools may require. Again, I want to ask your individual institutions what it is that they require for that piece, but typically financial aid awards are sent out after an acceptance or decisions are sent out. So that way, just kind of give us that time to review it all, and then we'll be able to send that out to you.
Yeah, I think I can also talk a little bit. Yep, so if you apply for early action, students are automatically considered for any merit-based scholarships. I will say for Virginia, our merit-based scholarship pool is very, very competitive, just because we have a very large amount of Virginia applicants. So our pool for merit-based scholarships are very competitive. Again, those are also going on your decision letter. The FAFSA as well for additional need-based aid, and then we offer several fee waiver opportunities. You know, ACT, NACAC waivers, free reduced waivers. Again, if you did in any of our Mason programs, WSP scholar programs, and the governor schools and EIPs as well.
Great, thank you. Our next question, which I think I might actually answer, and one of the questions is, can you advise on a general timeline for SAT or ACT for the college applications? Something that as counselors we typically recommend is to, whenever a student feels like they are ready starting in their junior year, typically we do advise that a student has completed their SAT or ACT test taking prior to the college deadlines, so that way they have the scores to be able to send. So that is kind of our advice coming out of the counseling office. I'm not sure if any of our panelists have a different kind of thought to that, or any of our other counselors who are here with us. No? Okay. Let me just see our next question. So I'm just trying to go through the chat. Can someone please talk about how admissions consider senior year classes and mid-year grades if they are, if you do look at them? I know some of you said that you didn't look at them.
Yeah, I can touch on this. When looking at the transcript as a whole, so before we sometimes look at senior year grades, if we don't have them in the first look around, we're looking at trends in the grades, right? So whether it's an upward trend, is it a downward trend, is it consistent? So an upward trend means that freshman year grades are probably the lowest out of all 3-4 years, and then it slowly progresses downward trend, the opposite, consistent. Makes sense. And so when we're looking at the senior year grade, so especially thinking about deferred students, maybe they did have the downward trend or they had the upward trend, but really those first 2 years were really, really low, and we're just starting to see some small progress their junior year. And then in the counselor recommendation, they mentioned that, senior year is their best year yet. And I'm like, well, I want to see what that senior year looks like, right? And so we're able to then take a look at their transcript with those mid-year grades and see, oh my gosh, X student has all A's now. They're really showing progress. And so that's kind of what we do when we're taking a look at those senior year grades, is just basically seeing the progress of the student and what that trend looks like.
I'll jump in and add one other thing there, if that's okay. My internet went out the last time I spoke, so hopefully this goes better. But I would say one other thing to be aware of, although we do not consider coursework in progress at South Carolina, if you email us and say, hey, my schedule has changed, we have to fill out a form internally and your application goes back to another round of review. So really think about that senior year schedule. And if you need to make a change, just know that some of the colleges are really going to have to dig into that, and that could change your admission decision. So please don't take that lightly.
Great, thank you. So our next question, do colleges consider the weighted or the unweighted GPA? Now the transcripts that Oakton sends, we submit with the weighted GPA. So I'm not sure how you all look at that.
I guess I'll start since I'm right down the road from y'all. We consider the weighted GPA. We don't recalculate at least y'all's GPAs. If a high school only has unweighted GPAs, then we would recalculate to make it weighted. But for Oakton, we use y'all's weighted GPA.
We don't necessarily put a heavy emphasis on GPA, only because GPA looks very different depending on what school you go to, depending on what school district you're applying from, or even depending on what state you're applying from. The main thing that we're looking for is academic rigor. So just seeing the classes that you had taken from 9th to 12th grade, and then seeing the final letter grades that you have received in those classes from 9th to 11th grade. So GPA to us is not necessarily something that we'll put a heavy emphasis on.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, when is the best time in the course of high school to actually apply to colleges? Which I believe is just senior year. I don't think that there's another answer to that. So typically, we will start meeting with our students junior year, and we will be offering information sessions, and students can take a look at applications. I know the Common App opens early, and they can start to take a look at the application and even fill out some of the information, but students will not actually apply to college until their senior year. Okay, so I'm just going through. Then one of our questions is, can you explain maybe about what your honors college actually is, and what is an honors college? Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll jump in on that. And it depends, right? Like college reps are going to say that to just about anything. But this is where you really want to dig in and do your homework to see what it means, because some colleges have honors colleges, some institutions have honors programs. Sometimes that means something, sometimes it doesn't, whether or not it's called a college versus a program. For South Carolina, I mentioned earlier, it's something that we're sort of known for. Our students really value our honors college. We have over 600 courses that are only available to honor students each year. They're taught by honors-only faculty members. They have a beautiful honors residence. Typically, they're going to probably receive a merit-based award. They have some really cool opportunities that are only available to those students both inside and outside the classroom. We also have what's called the Capstone Program. Honors is a 4-year program. It does require an additional application. Capstone gives you an honors-type peer group. It gives you those perks, but you don't necessarily have to do quite as much as you do in the honors college. So we have a lot of different opportunities for what we call our scholars programs, and I'll be happy to talk more about that maybe individually. But we have some cool opportunities, but again, it's really going to look different depending on where you're applying.
Thank you. Sorry, moving on to our next question. So Oakton has the standard and the advanced diplomas. How significantly weighted are these diplomas, if at all, in the application process? And are you guys even aware that we have different types of diplomas? And I might pose this to Amanda and Mario, since you guys are our in-state.
Yep, so we do not look at them. I do see that they're on the applications, since I do read for Oakton. I see the different ones, but we do not give weight over one over the other.
Same for us. Same as George Mason. We don't necessarily have a preference over one or the other. We're just looking particularly at the type of classes that you had taken and the rigor.
Yep, as long as y'all are graduating, that's what we care about.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so this one's a little long, so just bear with me. How has the admissions process changed with the shutdown? The stresses on students and teachers and counselors is unique to do online. How do you factor that in? Thank you and great session. Just reading word for word. So again, I don't know whoever just wants to jump in just to maybe talk about if things have changed a little bit with the admissions process, since COVID and the shutdown and everything.
One of the things that we talked about earlier was the SAT or ACT. A lot of institutions have decided to go test optional for the first time. We were one of those institutions, so definitely take advantage of that. And when it comes to test optional, my biggest advice would be if you do not feel comfortable with your SAT or ACT score and the school that you're applying to is test optional, don't feel obligated to submit it. Take advantage of that, right? Other changes for sure that you will see is if the institution that you're interested in applying to is on the Common App, for example, there is a specific question on the Common App that will ask you about how COVID-19 has impacted you, academically speaking, and that could be an area where you can share a little bit more about how this whole new world that we live in today has impacted you academically. For some students, COVID-19 has been harder than others, based on experiences, and we want to get the full picture, right? And as not necessarily just admissions folks, but also as human beings, we are going to be understanding of some of the challenges and some of the struggles that you may have faced throughout the academic school year, and that's completely okay. And you shouldn't feel that you have to hide that information from us, especially if you do want to share that. And again, it is up to you whether or not you want to share those experiences with us. But I would definitely recommend that if COVID-19 has truly had a meaningful impact on your academic work or your academic school year, to definitely share that with us so that way we can have the full picture of your experience.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly get it. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I wish we were doing this in person. I mean, for me, my favorite part of my job is getting out there and interacting with families, counselors, my colleagues at other schools. I mean, I love being out on the road, interacting with all of you. So, I mean, I'm grateful that we can do our work from home, but on the flip side of that, I wish that we were out there. So, I think most college reps too, recognize that this is not ideal. So we get it. And I think we're going to be as understanding as we possibly can be.
Great, thank you. And I see a lot of head nods, just from our other two panelists. And I'm sure that if we had, many more panelists up here, we would be seeing, the same head nod. So thank you for your answers. Sorry, I did lose my place. Okay. What questions do you wish students asked more in the college search or admissions process? So I guess for you guys, it would just more like be the college admissions process. But what questions do you wish students would ask you? And I will open this up to our counselors who are here as well, if any of you all would like to answer this, and to Mr. McClam.
Well, I don't know about specific questions that I want them to ask, but I do, as a counselor, there are questions that I'm hearing a lot from my students this year, and it is around virtual learning, because we've been virtual learning for already half this year, and some of our students are staying home for the rest of this year, and how that would look for college admissions. So I'm hearing, and also for letters of recommendation, because our teachers are online this year, it's harder to form those relationships with junior year teachers. So I hear a lot of a little anxiety about this year is so different. Is that going to impact me next year when I'm applying? So those are questions that I hear, and I would encourage my students to reach out to admissions reps if they have those specific questions.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there is no question that you shouldn't ask, and especially with COVID-related regulations, like one question that we've gotten a lot of, and I'm surprised I haven't gotten more of, quite honestly, is what does your campus look like now? What are students doing on campus now? So for us, we do have students on campus. And so that's one that like I love to answer, because I feel like our university has taken really great strides and has done a lot to make the student experience as much of a student experience as possible, while still obviously maintaining and staying within the regulations put in place. However, ask it that way rather than what is my freshman year first semester going to look like because of COVID, because I have no idea what tomorrow is going to look like, right? We have no idea, and it's not just in general, just especially with COVID, what things will look like in the next week, in the next few months, and especially come this next fall. Because while at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought this was going to be 2 weeks working from home, right? And that was it. And now we're almost a year in, and it's, who knows when that end in sight is. And so I definitely think if you frame it with, okay, so what is it that your campus is doing now, will kind of give you some insight into what your freshman year could possibly look like. It might not look like that. It could be like any other freshman year has been for every other person who's graduated already that didn't go through this COVID pandemic. Or it could be very similar to what it is now. But in that, and something that I mentioned before, and I know that Amanda had mentioned it too, like there's no stupid question. There's no dumb question when it comes to admission and the college search process, because if you don't know it, then you don't know it, right? And so that's what we're here to do, is to help guide you through the process and to give you those answers that are going to help you make an informed decision.
I'll just say, especially at the beginning of the college search, a lot of the questions are kind of surface level, which is to be expected. But I would just say, don't be afraid to ask, maybe instead of saying, how's your biology program? Because every college rep in the country is going to say, it's great, it's wonderful, it's the greatest bio program ever. Maybe say, what makes your biology program unique? So don't be afraid to kind of ask some really specific questions to make sure that you're comparing and contrasting what opportunities the colleges really have, rather than just kind of hearing their standard spiel, for lack of better words.
Great, thank you. And my advice with that question is also look at who you're asking. If you have specific questions about a specific college, obviously you want to go to the rep, right? They know their schools best. Oftentimes I will get questions about a specific college, and I have no idea because I don't work there. I don't know there's 4,000 some schools, and as a counselor, I don't know all of them inside and out. But there are things about processes and what Oakton does, that our counselors can answer. So when it comes to things like that, you'll want to go to your counselor. When it comes to college-specific questions, you want to go to the admissions counselors. We're always okay with students kind of talking to each other and asking questions, but sometimes our students don't know the right answer. And so they may just make up something so they have a question, or so they have an answer, or they'll maybe remember something that they thought they heard in a session and they'll give that as the answer. So we always do recommend that you go to either the admissions counselor or the Oakton school counselor, or to Mr. McClam with those specific questions. Okay, so our next question, and this is something that if you all can answer, obviously it's going to be more specific to your school, but do you accept the SAT super scores? I see 2 head nods, yes.
Yeah, we do. We don't, I know I've gotten questions in the past about super scoring the ACT. That's not something that we do. It's not necessarily made to super score. However, with the SAT, yes, we do super score test scores.
Yep, same here. We would super score SAT, but just take the composite from the highest composite from ACTs. But again, you don't have to submit them. Just another plug for score optional.
Same thing with us. We do super score.
Okay. Wonderful. I'm going to move on to Sam Bachman. Sam, do you want to turn on your mic and ask your question? I know you had your hand raised. Sam, are you still there? Nope. Okay. So I will move on. When is the best time to start college visits? During the pandemic, are your colleges offering virtual tours only or in person as well? Which I think this may have been covered, but there was a lot of information, so it doesn't hurt to get shared again.
I mean, honestly, I suggest it as early as you can, especially now that you are in your junior year and in the middle of it now. I would definitely say start this as soon as you can. If you want to wait until the summer when there's obviously more time, absolutely makes sense. Who knows, by then more things could be, more schools will be open for college tours. I'm hopeful. I'm not saying that that's a guarantee. But I know for St. Joseph's, we do have on-campus tours going on. They are limited to one family of 3 members total, max, that's it, to one tour guide. You still get a full tour of campus. There are, and I think it's only like 2 or 3 buildings that you would directly go into. Other than that, all the other, the main academic buildings will be closed. Yeah, I would try to do what you can. And especially now, since again, we live in a virtual world, a lot of schools have really fledged out really new and exciting virtual tours, virtual opportunities in general. So definitely take advantage of those. And social media is a huge way to get to know the campus on the student side of it as well. So yes, of course, you want to see what it directly looks like on campus, but if you want to also get the student perspective, start seeing what clubs and organizations at your institutions have an Instagram and see what it is that they do and what they're doing now in the middle of the pandemic too. I think that's a really good way to get kind of insight into the student experience as well.
Yeah, I think definitely echoing Sophia is definitely take advantage of all of the schools that have virtual tours, that now you're able to visit a school in Washington State that you might not have an opportunity to before. So definitely do that research to see which ones have virtual opportunities. Here at Mason, we are doing virtual tours and information sessions. We are not offering in-person tours and information sessions yet. Hopefully we will be, but obviously we continue to monitor the health conditions in Virginia. So right now we just have virtual information sessions and tours, but definitely don't be afraid to reach out again to your counselor. Be like, hey, what do you have to offer? What can I do? Again, to see campus and to get involved.
A piece of advice that I always give about the campus visit, and I think it's particularly true now if you're able to get on a campus, is please approach your visits with an open mind. You know, if you've already decided it's your dream school before you get out of your car, well, it's probably going to be an amazing visit. On the flip side of that, if you've decided, you know, this isn't the place for me before you even go on the tour, well, you're probably not going to like the tour. So please approach the tours with an open mind, and especially right now, things are not normal on college campuses. So some colleges you just can't tour at all. Others like us have some really limited in-person tours. So try to, if you can, extend a little bit of mercy to the colleges, because we're trying our best to get you on campus and to give you a little taste of it, but it's obviously not normal right now.
Thank you. Okay, so we do have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to go through the rest of these questions, and I know we have one person with their hand raised. So I just not sure I understand this question. It says, do early decision applicants go in at the same time as all other admissions types? So I think that's referring to the actual applications, possibly the deadlines, I think. And so if that is the case, early decision deadlines are typically very much earlier than the regular applicant deadline or application deadline. Usually they are, some are in October, but typically it's early to mid-November with a few December, and that they will generally find out their decision much earlier than with the regular decision pool. So I hope that answers your question. Kind of moving on. Are the applicant's odds of getting an acceptance offer increased if one or both parents and or a sibling attended that school? And obviously you guys can only speak to your schools. So Is there a chance if there's a legacy or a sibling? South Carolina says no.
Nope. So I would say we see it. We like to see it on the application, but being a legacy would not get you more of a chance to get in.
For us, we do look at legacy, but it's not necessarily going to carry a lot of weight in the final decision making. As I mentioned earlier, the main thing that we're looking for is making sure that you're fit for the major that you had chosen. But legacy does not carry as much weight as it used to in the past.
All right, thank you. And I know we briefly before we just talked about this, but just quickly, how important are those college those college visits for admission?
I think right now, not so important because one, most schools aren't offering on-campus tours. And secondly, even if we are, we understand that not everyone's going to be able to come to campus, whether it be for personal reasons, comfortability level, access, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, not necessarily the most important right now. In coming years, once we're past this, that demonstrated interest piece may and most likely come back into play for some schools. And so then, let's say in a typical year pre-COVID, I know for St. Joseph's, we don't weigh so heavily on demonstrated interest, but some schools do. And so you'll want to have, not as many touch points as possible. So it's not like go to that campus and visit it 20 times. But don't just think about the college, like the campus visit, but the touch points that you make with the admission counselor. So whether it's email communication, whether it's attending virtual webinars, attending virtual tours, info sessions, communicating, if we have set events in place that you're able to communicate with current students or faculty, those are all things that we don't even purposefully, what's the word I'm looking for? We don't even purposefully track, it's just in our system, right? And so we're still able to see that. And so that does also count towards that demonstrated interest piece. But I would say now with the pandemic, it's not going to be something that's factored into the admission decision.
Great, thank you. So two more. So this is also a little long one, so bear with me. What are you specifically looking for in an application to your scholars programs? Which factors are most heavily, which factors most heavily? Grades, SATs, extracurriculars, essay, or the interview? And what percentage of applicants are admitted, if you have that information?
For us, it is very much a holistic review. We're looking at everything. The grades have to be there, but we want to see intellectual curiosity. So those essays are really important for that component. Activities are extremely important. We're going to need to see a lot of leadership there. As far as the acceptance rates, I don't have those. I don't know that we publish those, but they're very selective at South Carolina.
Yeah, so Mason, for our university scholars programs, to be reviewed for university scholars, you would need to apply to the Honors College, and only about 20 scholars are selected each year out of the Honors College program or applicants. But again, it is a holistic review. We're looking at the grades, GPA trends, grade trends, GPAs, SATs, extracurriculars, and everything.
Great, thank you. And Raina Ali, if you're still with us, if you want to turn on your mic and ask your question.
Thank you. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you to all the counselors and the panelists that came. It's definitely helped me process the whole spiel a lot more, so thank you so much. And I actually had two questions. So this might be a little bit particular, but I spent half high school in one high school and half high school in another high school. So in the terms of like the context of the portfolio and all that, would you be receiving two portfolios? Because I feel like the context would be a lot different. And my second question was, is it more valuable on an application to see achievements and involvement within a certain scope of activities, like for example, a bunch of literary achievements or STEM throughout a long period of time, kind of establishing like a thread of interest or more unique achievements without that thread.
I would say that. Okay. I would say that when it comes to in one high school, that's completely okay. It happens. We have students who have gone from one high school to another in different states. We have students who have, done a freshman year, sophomore year internationally as abroad as well. That's fine. We only require students who have studied abroad to send us an official high school transcript. Other than that, all of that will be, captivated, or at least all of that will be seen in the self-report academic record that you will submit. When it comes to reviewing the application, we're going to be reviewing your application within the context of your current high school and what it offers. However, if by any reason you weren't able to necessarily get into a class because you didn't meet a certain criteria and whatnot, you're more than welcome to also share that with us. So you will definitely have that opportunity in the application, at least to Virginia Tech. And then to answer your second question, when it comes to extracurricular activities and achievements, that looks very different for all students. Some students have resources, have the ability to have access to specific resources. Some others don't. So we are going to be not necessarily too strict on what specific things we're looking for particular majors. So when it comes to extracurricular activities, it is all based on what experiences you may have had, and you won't be penalized if for some reason you're applying into like engineering and don't have specific programs or extracurricular activities that are engineering related. That will not be held against you, and vice versa, right? So that will be my response to hopefully your questions.
Yeah,
Great.
I think. Oh, I was going to just say, piggybacking off of that, yeah, same thing at Mason. When we receive your transcript from Oakton, it'll have your previous high schools on there. I know if I see something that is a little funky or strange, I would actually go and do the research into that other school myself to look at their school profile. But again, we'll see everything. And if we do have questions, I'll either reach out to you as a student or even your counselor to be like, hey, do you have any more context on this school or whatnot? But yeah, with the extracurriculars, again, it's not any more or less weight if you have a prolonged extracurricular, event or interest versus if you've only been doing something for one thing or, for a shorter amount of time. So again, it's just really us wanting to get to know you and what you have been or interested in outside of the classroom.
Great, thank you. So we do have a few minutes before our session is just going to automatically cut out because we have it us ending at 8 o'clock today. But there is one last question. How do you recommend deciding which colleges to apply early action or early decision to? I am going to offer just some of my advice with early decision, and I think Mario talked about this earlier. Something that I always tell my students: if you are going to apply to a school early decision, make sure that that is the school that you want to go to. You have the financial means to afford to go to that school because, like Mario said earlier, you may not get the financial package that you might need to attend that school. I would not use applying early decision as a strategy. A lot of our students ask that question. They say, well, I'm going to apply ED because, I'll have a higher chance of getting in. And when I say, well, is that like your dream school? You always wanted to go there? They're like, no, but it might increase my chances. So please do not use it as a strategy of getting in. And I will say the same for early action. Early action, of course, they don't have that binding contract, so it's not as, I would say, serious as applying early decision. But that is just my advice. Panelists, we're cutting out at 8:10 automatically. So if you have a quick sort of add to that, or our counselors also, feel free. Okay, well, so that is kind of our session for the evening. So I do want to again thank our panelists so much for joining us, and to all of our families who came out and our counselors. And again, I also just want to give a big shout out and thank you to Mr. McClam, because even though I feel like I've done most of the talking tonight, he has done a lot of the work with getting our panelists and getting the questions, and he has attended a few other of our family college nights. So Mr. McClam, is there anything that you would like to offer in conclusion?
No, ma'am. Just as you said, thank you to all the panelists for your time. This was a great success, and it wouldn't have been as nearly as successful if it was just us counselors doing it. So we appreciate y'all time and everything that you guys gave to us. I don't know all the extra work that Miss Allison is talking about. It wasn't me. It was all her. So we greatly appreciate your time again. And thank you to all the families as well. And just for everybody attending.
Thank you. And just also, we will be, and I know our panelists have said this too, we always prefer to do things in person. That is our preferred method. But we are very grateful to be able to offer this session virtually. And as a counseling department, along with Mr. McClam, we are hoping to offer, some other nights or just some other information sessions for our students later in the year. We haven't worked, really any of that out yet because we're still trying to figure out how things are going to be going moving forward. So hopefully there'll be more information to come. But again, thank you everyone. Thank you for bearing with us for this long program, and enjoy your evening.